This past Saturday, we had another parents and kids event at Lolakana that bisected my day job. I started just before midnight on Friday, then went long into the evening afterwards, fitting in naps throughout the day. The effort was worth it. The event was a hit, and it was a lot of fun hosting something that's both jujitsu focused and allows families to have fun together. It's something we do throughout the year, and if you're in Victoria, British Columbia, shoot us an email and book your spot now for the next one. These events hit differently when it's your gym. Jessica and I own Lolakana, and most days we're in the background while the rest of the team runs the classes. Balancing the gym with the day job is a lot, and there's a tendency to just keep moving. But since the start of the year, I've been making a conscious effort to pause throughout the day and just, I don't know, like indulge in the moment, to be present, to be grateful. Saturday, in the middle of buff monkey back control, I did just that. The overwhelming feeling was awe, but also a little bit of confusion. What's happened to jujitsu? This wasn't the sport, the martial art that I started with 26 years ago. Nobody was marketing this sort of thing back in my hometown of Kelowna, and if they were, I wouldn't have come across it. The club I started at was MMA focused, but that label wouldn't exist for a few years at least. No holds barred and Vale Tudo were the terms that people in the scene used. Go ahead and imagine trying to explain mixed martial arts to someone without using the term. If you think you just referenced the UFC, at the time you'd either have to explain the sport to someone unfamiliar and bore them to death, or defend it because if they had heard about it at the time, their exposure was likely through the mainstream media coverage that ultimate fighting was wanton barbarism. Instead, the club offered Muay Thai and submission grappling. Basically, no gi jiu-jitsu with MMA gloves. I was hooked. I made it to as many classes as I could, and as the years went by, I moved on to different clubs that separated grappling and striking. I got my first real taste of sport jiu-jitsu. From that first club to the second was 5 years. And I didn't just fall into it after seeing an Instagram ad. So I just got to stop here and just say pro wrestling is the strongest style. In the 90s, I was a pro wrestling fan trading VHS tapes in the mail. ECW, CMLL, All Japan, New Japan, and death matches. But at the time, shoot style was a favorite of mine. My buddies and I were obsessed over what was real in pro wrestling, and shoot style really blurred those lines completely. Throw in like the occasional Shuto and Pancrase fight, plus cam footage of cards that featured both pro wrestling and legit fights, and I really didn't know what I was watching anymore. I loved it. A few years later, I started hanging out with people in the local MMA scene and began watching UFC and Pride cards with actual competitors. I eventually asked about how classes worked at the club, and I didn't really want to be a fighter or anything. I just loved submissions. In pro wrestling, there worked. Here, they were real, and I could really learn to do them. But I still don't know how we got here today. Standing on the mats, watching 5-year-olds take back control on their parents, I knew why everyone was there. One, jujitsu is awesome. Two, we advertised the event. And three, people showed up to have fun with their kids. But I didn't understand how this all happened. Back in the truck before restarting the day job, I spent 15 minutes drafting a research prompt in Gemini. I thought it was mostly the MMA connection. That's how my mother finally understood what jujitsu is, but it didn't come up at all in the initial results. So basically, it's Joe Rogan's doing. Actually, Gemini gave me five possible explanations, but the first one is beginning with Joe Rogan's podcast. The first episode was December of 2009. And like he's constantly evangelized jujitsu, not just as a sport, but also as a tool for mental health. That definitely tracks. But what actually surprised me was that he's only been on since 2009. It feels like he's been doing that podcast forever. The second part is that unlike combat sports where you get punched and kicked on purpose, Jiu-Jitsu allows live sparring with 100% intensity and low brain trauma. This maps exactly onto why I stopped all of the striking around 2009. The third thing Gemini came up with was there's been a transition from kind of tough guys to athletes and players. Organizations like the IBJJF and ADCC created governing bodies and rule sets that grew jiu-jitsu towards being a spectator sport. Um, this also tracks with what I've noticed. Lots of places still have that tough guy culture. At Lolakana, we're definitely focused on the hobbyists, communities, and families, and growing the sport in a family-friendly direction. The tough guys and gals will just become like an intrinsic part of that process. Now, the fourth facet was celebrities. Gemini listed Anthony Bourdain, Keanu Reeves, Tom Hardy, and Mark Zuckerberg. Made me go, oh, yeah, yeah. My celebrity list would have been Anthony Bourdain, Dave Bautista, and CM Punk. Number five is the fashion element, the aesthetic, expressing yourself through the clothes you wear. This is a big one for a lot of the women that I speak with about jujitsu, what to wear and how it looks. Jessica and I have matching pink gis. I'm a white gi guy most of the time, but I've always liked pink and became comfortable wearing it from our time in Korea, where it's not an uncommon color for men to wear. And I'm a big Jean LaBelle fan. Anyways, men care about the fashion thing too, but most of us keep that verbal enthusiasm bottled up deep inside. So, what do we do about all this? There's a dilution happening. Forces trying to pull the sport away from something real that happens on the mats. People conflating time spent consuming content, creating content, discussing jujitsu with actually playing jujitsu. It's a problem. And there's a temptation to protect what was and say that it's not for everyone. It's a combat sport after all. But gatekeeping isn't the solution. When I started 26 years ago, I think some of the people who could have become the best players in the world, who could have contributed to the sport, preserved the important traditions, shaped what it is today, ended up somewhere else. They never found it because it was too obscure, it was too hard to access, like too wrapped up in like tough guy culture. I only got in because of a passing conversation. Now it's in the culture. Outsiders see the Instagram ads. They hear their coworkers talking about it and probably heard it was something that Joe Rogan evangelizes. But it does remain a combat sport. It's not going to be for everyone. But right here and right now, there's never been a better time for everyone to try. If you're in Victoria, British Columbia, Lolakana Martial Arts features more than 20 classes a week in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, No-Gi Jiu-Jitsu, and kickboxing. We're Indigenous owned. We have free parking. Come check out our free trial week.